Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hiba Raheel and I'm a fifth year medical student. Today I will be talking about the GIT OSPE, giving you a very quick overview. I have to apologize that the session isn't live and we're not interacting. I would have preferred that, but due to some unseen circumstances, I had to record it. So I hope that you really benefit from this. So I have tried to make this as interactive as possible. After each reading each question, I would want you to stop the recording and try solving the question on your own, and then resume the recording and listen to my explanation and see if you got it correct. Okay, so let's begin. So just a quick overview about the GIT OSPE. It's inshallah going to be inshallah it's going to be easy. It's not going to be that difficult. You need to know your histology really well. I don't know if Dr. Ani shared some 5-minute videos with you. If she didn't, she did share with the previous batches these quick 5-minute videos that she made, which you can listen to, which you can definitely listen to, and you can ask someone to share the Dropbox link and watch those. Other than that, focus on the liver. They can bring a lot of questions from it because it's a very question-rich organ, if you know what I mean. It has a lot of potential to have questions. And yeah, so we'll be going along the presentation, and if I remember more tips and if I remember more areas that you should focus on, I'll point it out, okay? So let's start with the first station. Okay, so identify structure shown in the ultrasound below. So pause the recording over here and try solving it. All right, and then this question has part B as well. What is the embryological origin of the structure shown below? So this question, the mark for this part of the question, like part B, would require you to get part A correct. However, for example, if you did not get part A correct, but part B is correct based off of part A, then you will still get the mark. All right, so assuming that you answered with liver, so that is correct. That was an ultrasound of the liver. And how can you tell? So a liver always looks like a sponge under the ultrasound. So it has these holes and it has this white border, which is basically the capsule of the liver, and any fat in the body is going to appear white. So in the ultrasound, that is. So the capsule is made above fascia, and underneath the capsule we have fat, right? And so this is what is representing the border of the liver, and the sponge-like appearance is very hallmark feature of the liver. So now they may not bring such an easy image, they may bring a little bit more difficult image. So for example, let's see over here. So they might show you an ultrasound with the portal vein showing. This is what it looks like. It's going to be this long structure, kind of like a hole, and it's going to be dark because it has fluid in it. It has blood or fluid or water. It appears black in the ultrasound machine. So this is what it's going to look like. This is the branch of the portal vein, and this is just basically showing you the blood flow in the portal vein. So the liver, it is derived from the endoderm, particularly the hepatic diverticulum, and it's a derivative of the foregut. So as we know, the abdominal organs, they arise from the foregut, the midgut, and the hindgut. So the foregut gives rise to the liver, and then the stomach and the esophagus, and then we have, and also the spleen, and the midgut gives rise to the small intestine and part of the large intestine, and the remaining of the large intestine, as well as the colon as well as the rectum, it comes from the hindgut. Okay. All right, so this is a really nice image that I found of the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. So for each basically each division of the embryo, we have different structures arising from it. I'm not going to go into too many details, but this image is really helpful. Just like a very quick overview, the ectoderm basically gives rise to the surface coverings of the body. So that means the skin, the sweat glands, the hair follicles, and then your nervous system, so the nerves and everything. The mesoderm gives rise to everything in the middle. So, for example, your skeletal system, the muscular layer, and you can actually see the mesoderm in the middle, right? So, think of it as the middle of the body, whatever we have the muscles, we have the circulatory lymphatic systems, reproductive organs, the adrenal glands. And then we have the endoderm, which gives rise to basically your major organs, such as your liver, pancreas, your thymus, the majority of the digestive tract. Okay, so let's move on to station 2. So first part is identify the organ below. Pause the video right here and attempt at solving the question on your own. All right, and then name the type of epithelium seen below. Again, pause the video here and try solving it on your own. All right, so let's say that you answered esophagus. That is very correct. This is a view of the esophagus under the microscope. And what about the epithelium? That was the stratified squamous epithelium. Now, how can we tell? Because whenever we are identifying a stratified epithelium, we always look at the topmost layer. So here, the topmost layer is made up of flat-looking cells. These flat-looking cells are squamous cells. They're squashed. I like to call squamous cells squash cells. So they're squashed. They appear squashed, and so that is that's based on the cells that are present in the top two layers. We name the stratified epithelium after that. So in this case, this is the stratified squamous epithelium, and it's very particularly found in the esophagus. This is a very, very, very high yield question. It has often come in the previous exams. Okay, so this is the basically this is the layers of the esophagus. We have the epithelium right over here, and this is your stratified squamous epithelium, and that is sitting on the basement membrane. After the basement membrane, we have the lamina propria, which is basically the connective tissue. We have the mucosal muscle layer, and then we have the submucosa, and then we have the muscularis propria, so the muscles that make up the esophagus. Okay, let's move on to station 3. So identify the blood vessel. This one right here. And then mention 2 branches of the blood vessels labeled below. So stop the recording here and try solving it on your own. All right, moving on to the answers. So that was the superior mesenteric artery and any 2 branches, the right colic and the ileocolic artery. So going back here, this right here is the celiac trunk. This is the superior mesenteric, and this is the inferior mesenteric. So the aorta comes out of the heart, and when it passes through the thorax, the chest basically, it's called the thoracic aorta, and then it passes down to the abdominal cavity and it becomes the abdominal aorta. And within the abdomen, it gives rise to 3 major blood vessels, which then branch out into smaller blood vessels supplying the essential organs. So the very first blood vessel that comes out of the abdominal aorta is the celiac trunk. Then we have right here the superior mesenteric, and then we have the inferior mesenteric. Okay, so for the superior mesenteric, it has some clinical significance. Go back to your basic anatomy and kind of like figure out what I mean over here. And as for the branches, I found this really, really nice table from Ambos. You can find tables like similar to this for celiac trunk and inferior mesenteric artery as well. So the main branches of the SMA are the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery, which, as the name suggests, it supplies the pancreas. Then we have the duodenal and the ileal artery. Again, it's in the name, it supplies the duodenum and the ileum. Then we have the ileocolic artery, and colic means it supplies the appendix. Okay, so colic, it applies, ileo means that it supplies the ileum, and ileocolic, so the colon and the ileum. And then we have the right colic, which supplies the ascending colon, and then the middle colic, which supplies the transverse colon. And then the descending colon is supplied by the left colic artery, which is a branch of the inferior mesenteric artery. And how can you remember this? Remember that the ascending colon is on the right side, and the descending colon is on the left side. And I will show you what it looks like in the upcoming pictures. Okay, so very important, go over this table. I would say that the course of the blood vessels is not that important. Area of supply is very, very important. And then the main branches, and if you can also memorize the smaller branches, that's good. Okay, station 4. So one of the very famous and very, very, like, it's the hot topic, it's their favorite thing to ask about is the anatmage. So there is this PDF of all the anatmage with the labeled, like, it's labeled. And so I would highly recommend going over it before you're asking. If there's one thing that I recommend revising right before you go in, like very, very last minute, is your anatmage, because like a lot of the times you cannot identify certain structures unless you've memorized it. So for example, structure number 12 or 13, especially like blood vessels, because the organs, you can still visualize them, you can still understand it based on the color, based on the shape. However, the blood vessels are quite hard to identify and memorize because they look the same. So I would highly recommend you go over the anatmage PDF really like the last thing before going in. So pause the video here and attempt at solving the question. It says identify the gallbladder below. It's a very easy one. So this is the gallbladder, number 5. Number 4 is the liver. As you can see, you can clearly visualize the liver at T12. You can see other structures here as well. And gallbladder essentially sits within the liver, so that's why it's easier to spot. And another feature is that it appears very dark because of the presence of bile. And so because it appears really dark, it's very easy to spot. Okay, I hope this was an easier question. All right, so we're halfway through station 5. Identify the structure labeled 14 below. So this right here, pause the video. All right, so this was the superior mesenteric artery. So how can you tell that this is a superior mesenteric artery? Is because the superior mesenteric artery usually comes from, it comes out of the aorta at level 1, upper border. Usually they would give you the level, the spinal level, because it's really hard to identify. It's really hard to identify the blood vessels under in the anatmage if the spinal level is not given. You can also see it here. For example, if they don't specifically mention or label the spinal level, they will give you the orientation. You can see that it's actually at the top of the thoracic, at the top of the lumbar region, at the end of the thoracic region. And so this here, you can also spot both the kidneys, and you can see that the liver is really not that visual because you can't really visualize it because you're looking at it from the bottom. So we're heading towards the end of the liver, and we're starting to go towards like this, the beginning of the intestines, basically. This right here is the gallbladder. It's almost disappeared, and this is the hepatic flexure, and this right here is the stomach body, and this is the transverse colon, and this right here is the descending colon, okay? But this structure is the one that I was talking about. This one, this tiny thing that's coming out, that's your SMA. All right, so station number 6. Identify the impression on the hepatic surface. So pause the video. All right, so this is actually a very high yield topic, as I previously mentioned. The liver is very big organ and they can bring actually a lot of questions from this. So I would highly recommend mastering and everything about the liver as much as you can. So if you answered the renal impression, that is correct. However, if you didn't get it correct, no worries, you still have time to go over it, and let's make it easier, okay? So let's see. So first of all, when you get a picture like this, or even if you get an actual like cadaveric liver, the first thing that I want you to see is if you are looking at it from the top or the bottom. So orient yourself. How can you orient yourself? How would you know if I'm looking at it from the top or the bottom? Is very easy. So first thing you do is you visualize the gallbladder. Once you spot the gallbladder, that is your instant clue that I'm looking at it from the bottom, okay? And usually the impressions you can't see from the top, but you can only see it from the bottom. So first, so once you're done with that, then you see if you're looking at it from the right, so then you basically identify the right side and then the left side. Okay, so how can you do that? So as you can see, the right side is sort of like curved. It's less shiny, the surface, it's blunt, whereas here it's not blunt. It's like a very sharp, thin edged surface, right? And this is what it looks like. So on the right side is where the kidney, sorry, on the right side is where the kidneys will come in contact with the liver, and on the left side we have the stomach, right? So the left side is a little higher than the right side, and this is right here where the stomach is, and here is your renal lobe, the lobe of the kidneys. They come in contact with the liver. So let's go back here. This was the right side. As you can see, this is a very blunt edge, very blunt edge. Oops, my bad. Yeah, and this is a very sharp edge. Again, let's go back. This is a very sharp edge. This is definitely your left side, and this is the gastric impression, and this is the renal impression. Okay. And another thing that you need to visualize is the gallbladder, which I already showed you. Also, one more thing before I forget, on the right side, you have three impressions actually. You have you have 4 impressions on the right side and 1 impression on the left side. So for the right side, remember you have the suprarenal impression, you have the renal impression, colic impression, and duodenal impression. So all 3, and they go in that manner. So the suprarenals are also the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. So the first impression that you would see is the suprarenal or the adrenal impression. Then you have the renal impression, and below that you have the loop of the bowel coming, so that's the colic impression. And lastly, here you have the duodenal impression. It's very next to the gallbladder because the gallbladder releases the bile into the duodenum, right? So it has to be very close proximity. And here is the gastric impression. So the impressions are not, very well demarcated on an actual cadaveric liver. If, for example, let's say in this case, it was like the arrow is pointing towards just the right side. So if you mention any of the right-sided impressions, you will get the mark, unless it's pointing at a very specific place, like for example here, then you need to know, okay, this is the duodenal impression because it's right next to the gallbladder. You really need to know that. But here you can't really tell the difference between suprarenal impression and renal impression and colic impression. And yeah. Okay, station 7. All right, so identify the structure labeled below. So this is what is labeled. Pause the video. and mention the blood supply to the labeled structure. Again, pause the video and attempt at solving the question. Okay, so what you were looking at is the transverse colon. Sorry, it's not the transverse colon, my bad, it's the descending colon. This right here is the transverse colon. This is the ascending colon. So here is actually your descending colon. How can you tell? Because this is the hepatic flexure and this is the splenic flexure. So what's the difference? So the hepatic flexure is actually a little bit below because the size of the liver is massive. And so because of this really big size of the liver, the intestines are usually pushed down and the liver is found on the right side. On the left side is where you have the stomach and you have the spleen. So they don't really take that much space, and so the bowels actually extend to quite high, and they're connected to the spleen here. So this is your descending, your transverse, and your ascending. And the left colic artery or the inferior mesenteric artery supplies the descending colon, as I previously mentioned. And your SMA supplies the ascending colon and part of the transverse colon. All right, so here's another table for the inferior mesenteric artery. The main branches that you need to know, they're less than the SMA. So we have the left colic. Remember, the right colic came from the SMA. And then we have the sigmoid arteries, and then we have the superior rectal artery. So the left colic artery is basically, it runs towards the descending colon, and then it anastomoses with the middle colic artery, and that's where the ascending branch, and then the descending branch, it anastomoses with the sigmoid artery right over here. And where does it supply? The transverse colon and the descending colon. Then we have the sigmoid arteries, which supplies the sigmoid colon. And then we have the superior rectal arteries, which supplies the upper 2/3 of the rectum. So one really cool thing about the GI system is that the blood vessels, they anastomose with each other. So we're going to come to it later, but even in the stomach, the blood vessels, they arise from different like branches. They come from like different major blood vessels, and then their branches, they sort of connect together to form a network. And then the same thing goes with the mesenteric arteries. Inferior mesenteric and superior mesenteric, they anastomose with each other because they're terminal branches, they sort of form a network. Okay, station 8. So this one's histology 1. Name one histological feature of the organ shown below. So anything that you can identify from this organ. Pause the video right now. And then name the structure indicated below. So right here. And again, pause the video right now. Okay, so what was the classical histological feature? It's the hexagonal shaped classical liver lobule. So the liver is divided into lobules at a microscopic level, and each lobule, if you look at it under microscope, it has a very, very, very classic feature, which means that it looks like hexagons, which is actually very, very interesting because no other organ in the body looks like that under the microscope. So it's very easy to identify, and if you get the station, you know, it's easy full marks for the station because you can't go wrong for identification aspect. Now, what about this arrow that was pointing right in the middle? Well, that is the central vein. So each hepatic lobule is in the center. It has a structure that you can see here. It's called the central venule or the central vein, and towards the edges of the hepatic lobule, you have the portal triad. So the portal triad or the portal area is basically a portal vein, a branch of portal vein, a branch of hepatic artery, and one branch of the bile duct. Each portal triad supplies each liver lobule. Okay, so this liver lobule is supplied by this portal area or this portal triad, and you're basically the portal triad, it kind of, so basically the hepatic artery and the portal vein, they drain into the central vein, whereas the bile, it goes from the central vein over here. Okay, you can really see it very nicely in this image. This is a very helpful image. So as you can see that the bile is sort of going into the bile ducts because it's produced in the liver and then it's stored in the gallbladder. So it goes from the central vein into the, sorry, not the central vein, I'm sorry. It goes from the hepatocytes, it collects from the hepatocytes and it goes to the bile duct, and that is where then it flows to the gallbladder, and then the hepatic artery and the portal vein, they drain into the central vein. All right, so next we're going to move on to station 9. Identify the type of hernia shown in the image below. We'll pause the video right here. All right, so the answer is that was the direct hernia. And why did I say that was the direct hernia? Is because it was projecting through the abdominal wall. So basically inguinal hernias are divided into two. We have the direct and the indirect hernia. The direct hernia, they open at the opening of the inguinal canal, as well as the indirect hernia, it opens at the so the direct one opens near the opening of the inguinal canal, whereas the indirect hernia, it passes through the opening and it goes and it opens at the opening of the inguinal canal. Okay, so very close to actually the testes. And usually the indirect hernias are identified or spotted at birth, whereas if an older patient is coming to you in the clinic, they usually have direct inguinal hernia and it's quite above. Okay, so here's what it looks like. This is the direct hernia. As you can see, it's not really present within the inguinal canal, whereas this one is. And then the direct hernia passes through the rings and the indirect one doesn't. Okay, and so this is what it looks like right over here. Okay, and last station. All right, so name 2 blood vessels supplying the labeled structure. And part 2 is name 2 blood vessels supplying this labeled structure. So pause the video here, and there we go. So first of all, you need to, if you spotted this organ to be the stomach, you're absolutely correct. This is the remnant of the stomach. So this is the lower esophageal sphincter. This is where the esophagus is attached, but they cut it out. And this is the connection to the duodenum. This is the lesser curvature, and this is the greater curvature. So for the lesser curvature, we have the left and the right gastric arteries. And then for the greater curvature, we have right and the left gastroepiploic arteries. There's a big difference, okay? Epiploic and just gastric arteries. So, oops, sorry. Okay, so basically the left and the right gastric arteries, they come from the celiac trunk, which is right over here. You can see this is the celiac artery or the celiac trunk, and then the branches come out and they sort of anastomose towards the lesser curvature, and same goes with the greater curvature. The right and the left, they come together and they anastomose. All right, so I hope that was beneficial. Yeah, there were only 10 questions, but it was just to give you like a brief overview of the OSPE and just prepare you for it, what to expect, what not to expect. If you have any questions, please email me or text me on my number on WhatsApp, and I'd be more than happy to help you. Good luck for the exam season. I hope you guys do really, really well. And yeah, bye.